I'm telling you, Elephant, wrestling isn't real. It's the whole first topic of this iceberg chart that I conveniently have with me at this given moment. You're just trumpeting up the wrong African Saharan tree. I'd rather watch a dude's head get kicked off of its face by a bear in a human donkey suit. Now that's exciting. Wait, when were you able to speak? You dumbass, I'm talking to the elephant sitting right there. Piss off, I ain't leaving. Ugh, where am I? I choose to defend myself. I know some tricks up my sleeve. Ladies and gentlemen of the courtroom and the jury. Hello, people of the YouTube intro. The art of professional wrestling is rife with controversy, unexpected results, double crosses, and just completely batshit events. I plan on going through as many as I can with the help of this iceberg chart to educate the masses on why professional wrestling is a form of media that will never be replicated if it ever disappears from the face of the earth. If you don't know what an iceberg chart is, I'll explain it for you real quick. The top of the chart, or aptly put, the tip of the iceberg, will be topics pretty well known by anybody or people of basic knowledge in said subject. The deeper you go, the more obscure the topics become. Only the biggest of fans should know the topics on the bottom, but even they might not know anything about it. Welcome to Frozen Takes. Our very first episode starts off with us trying to figure out what laws exist. Just the most riveting shit on this channel. There exists a law called the Controlled Substances Act. A controlled substance is drugs like marijuana, cocaine, heroin, morphine, etc. This law was passed by the 91st Congress and signed into law by our favorite president, Richard "I'm not a crook" Nixon. The act is the statute establishing the federal drug policy on regulating these controlled substances under already existing federal laws. Through this law, substances are placed within one of 5 categories called schedules. The placements of such substances are based on their medical use, potential for abusing the substance, and the safety/dependence liability. Schedule 5 are the substances with the least amount of restrictions placed upon them. An example of the Schedule 5 drug is codeine. Schedule 1 are the substances with the most restrictions placed upon them, which are weed, meth, cocaine, etc. Basically, anything seen in the game Schedule 1, which I learned while researching, that's why the game is called that. Extra little fun fact for you. It's almost like it's a 10 facts in 10 minutes episode. The penalties for distributing, selling, obtaining, and owning these drugs are up to the individual state's discretion. Steroids, which are used like testosterone and help build muscle tissue, weren't listed under any schedules for controlled substances at the start of our story. They were still illegal to obtain them without a prescription or sell them, but you couldn't get in trouble for using said steroids. Let's get that natty build and eat some 2 chicken breasts and 1 asparagus while I tell you about 2 court cases that could have changed the course of modern professional wrestling. Vincent Kennedy McMahon was the owner of Titan Sports Inc., the parent company to the World Wrestling Federation, which will be shortened to the WWF throughout the rest of this video. During the early 1980s, the WWF would undergo a massive national expansion after being a part of the territory system used by the National Wrestling Alliance, also known as the NWA. The WWF would separate from the NWA, becoming an independent promotion, and start signing all of the top draws of professional wrestling at the time. People like Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Roddy Piper, newspaper, the Iron Sheik, and more all went from traveling from territory to territory to working exclusively for Vince McMahon, making the WWF extremely popular in the 1980s. In the mid-1980s, the Pennsylvania House of Representatives were reviewing the Pennsylvania State Athletic Commission and the rules and regulations of holding athletic events within the state. One of these rules was the hiring of an in-company doctor instead of using doctors outside of the company in whatever city they were in at the time. The companies would be given a list of doctors approved by the Department of Health to choose who they wanted to fill that position. Anita Scales, the Director of Compliance and Regulations in the WWF, was in charge of hiring said doctor. One Dr. George Zahorian III was on the list, and the WWF wanted him as their ringside doctor. Anita Scales, however, didn't want to hire him. Why? Because he was busy dealing steroids and painkillers to anybody who wanted it and had the money available to pay it. Anita opposing the decision didn't stop the WWF and the wrestlers under their employ from pressuring her to hire Dr. Z, which happened in 1984. Time for a little background on Dr. Z. Dr. Z is an osteopathic urologist from Pennsylvania who regularly delivered drugs and steroids to wrestlers whenever they had a show in said state. He obtained these drugs from the Rugby Darby Pharmaceutical Company from Westbury, Long Island. Despite the copious amount of money Dr. Z was making, shit is about to hit the fan. Quick draw, Rick McGraw would die from a heart attack at the age of 30 on November 1st, 1985. He was one of Dr. Z's most prolific customers. This motherfucker was drowning in the juice. His death at a young age from an affliction usually affecting older people caused some discussions about whether or not the steroids he took caused it. The death of McGraw wouldn't stop Zahorian from selling his candy, as certain wrestlers would put it, especially in Pennsylvania. In 1986 alone, the WWF would run 77 shows in that state. Kinda gives you an idea on how many of these wrestlers were getting this shit pumped into their veins. Shit is still hitting the fan, it's going fucking everywhere. In 1987, both Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik were arrested for drunk driving and cocaine possession, which forced the WWF to enact a wellness policy for its performers. Dr. Zahorian was still safe for now because the WWF wasn't testing for any steroids. They were testing for that hard shit. The policy at the time was the first offense leads to a 6-week suspension, the second offense leads to a 6-week suspension and rehab, and the third offense is getting fired. This wellness policy didn't even come close to deterring Zahorian. He continued supplying steroids to the WWF for 5 years. He would sell steroids to 37 WWF wrestlers and 43 other wrestlers not associated with the WWF. One location he specifically supplied drugs to was the office of Vince McMahon in Stamford, Connecticut during the 70s and 80s when it was legal to buy them. McMahon even bought steroids himself from Dr. Z for personal use starting in 1987. Can you guys stop throwing shit at the fan? The room is starting to smell and the fan is getting clogged up. Dr. George Zahorian was caught red-handed conducting his side hustle. An undercover witness for the feds used a tape recorder to record his conversation with Zahorian when he went to go buy his fix from the Good Doctor on October 1st, 1989. William Dunn, a former strength coach from the University of Virginia, was the snitch. His go-to drugs from Zahorian were steroids, Valium, and codeine-laced Tylenol, purchased from mid-1985 to March 1990. Fun fact, his last purchase from Zahorian was for $7,000. The evidence gathered by William Dunn would help the federal authorities investigate Zahorian on the grounds of distributing controlled substances. One tiny wrench was thrown into their plans before they could even begin the investigation. Linda McMahon, Vince's wife and future presidential cabinet member, would learn about the investigation. A federal prosecutor tipped off one of the WWF's lawyers, Jack Krill, about the investigation during a social event. With this new information, Linda McMahon sent a memo to the company suggesting to cut off Zahorian from the company before he could get arrested and tried. The memo she sent also suggested that someone should tell Zahorian about the investigation, which is exactly what Pat Patterson did, allegedly. Everything is alleged on the internet or you get fucking canceled and probably sued. Billy Mitchell's a fake and a fraud and cheated at Donkey Kong. Allegedly. Can't sue me now, bitch. Pat Patterson would also allegedly tell Zahorian to destroy any evidence of his contact with the WWF. It's not like Pat Patterson can sue me. He's fucking dead. During the start of his investigation in 1990, anabolic steroids became illegal to use through the Anabolic Control Act. This act simply redefines what anabolic steroids are under the CSA, which is the Controlled Substances Act. They have been defined as any drug or hormonal substance related to testosterone. This act also placed anabolic steroids under the category of Schedule 3. Only a small number of anabolic steroids are approved by the government for human or veterinary use. Now, Zahorian is essentially completely fucked. Prosecutors would intercept FedEx packages sent by Zahorian to wrestlers like Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper. Inside the package was the steroids Zahorian was pumping out. They now have enough evidence to bring this man to trial. They raided his office to grab Dr. Z and caught him trying to shred documents inside his office. Looks mighty suspicious to me. I don't have all the information of who was there at the trial and what position they were in, but I do have some of them. In the courtroom was Assistant U.S. Attorney Theodore Smith III, Judge William Caldwell, and the lawyer for George Zahorian, William Kostopoulos. Totaling up to 14 charges, Zahorian was charged with 8 counts of distributing steroids, 1 count of possession with intent to deliver steroids, 4 counts of delivering prescription painkillers and other controlled substances, and 1 count of possessing substances with intent to deliver. In easier terms, he's getting charged with performing a completely legitimate side hustle. He faced 3 years and a $250,000 fine on each count. This bitch is about to be broke. He also faced the forfeiture of $3.7 million in property. This bitch about to be double broke. This trial revealed a lot of information involving George Zahorian and his selling of controlled substances. This is where it was revealed that Zahorian was supplying the WWF steroids specifically to Vince McMahon's office at Titan Towers. It also revealed that both Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon received steroids from the doc. William Dunn was a major witness for the prosecution, considering he's the one who snitched on Zahorian in the first place. There's a few things he testified, like the fact Zahorian never officially examined him before dealing him any of these drugs. William Dunn actually didn't want to be involved, but became involved after getting arrested by the authorities. He was arrested for obtaining painkillers in Virginia by using a forged prescription, which he pled guilty for. Dunn testified that Zahorian sold him thousands of dollars worth of steroids, Valium, and codeine. The amount of drugs Dunn would take allegedly caused Dunn to have high blood pressure. This seems like some bullshit Dunn added just for a little cherry on top. It has nothing to do with the drug charges, but fuck this guy for giving me high blood pressure, you know what I'm saying? Dunn needed codeine for his headaches and Valium to help him sleep at night. The packages would be sent through FedEx, which apparently is a great way to transport illegal drugs through the mail system. He also flew to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania anywhere from 6 to 8 times to make some exchanges. He became addicted to codeine in 1987 and used Zahorian as his main connection to getting some codeine. Some wrestlers also testified, like Roddy Piper, Rick Martel, Brian Blair, and Daniel Spivey. Hulk Hogan was mentioned during the case but was never forced to testify. The prosecution and the judge were both convinced to waive the testimony of the racist American who doesn't like his daughter dating N-words. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can find the clip where he's racist very easily. The judge said Hulk Hogan didn't have to honor the subpoena for personal and private matters pertaining to him and Zahorian. William Kostopoulos would argue in defense of Zahorian that the CSA was unconstitutional and forced drugs and steroids onto the black market. The judge didn't give one shit and sentenced Zahorian to 3 years in prison, a fine of $12,700, and a 2-year probation period after his sentence. No wrestlers were charged criminally because it wasn't illegal to take steroids at the time. The revelation in the Zahorian case would lead prosecutors and the federal government down the road of trying to convict Vince McMahon. The month before the trial, Vince suffered from a herniated disc, which is why in the court photos he will have a neck brace on. It wasn't just for sympathy, like a lot of wrestling fans claim it was for. He actually had surgery for it. The cooperation of Zahorian with the authorities made prosecutors successfully bring McMahon to court in 1993. Just like before, I have some names of prosecutors and defense attorneys, so I'll share them with you real quick. You got Judge Jacob Mishler, Sean O'Shea, the prosecutor, Laura Bravetti, the personal attorney for Vince McMahon, and Jerry McDevitt, attorney for Titan Sports. Another fun fact. Wow, we're getting a lot of facts here. It almost is like a 10 facts in 10 minutes. Jerry McDevitt has been the lawyer for the WWF and WWE for 30 years. He has stopped representing them by now, but this man was a loyal dog for a long time. 6 charges were brought to McMahon, and they include conspiring to distribute steroids, possession of illegal steroids with intent to distribute steroids, and embezzlement for allegedly using money from Titan Sports to purchase illegal steroids. The location of where the case should take place was a smidgen of controversy with the prosecution and defense. The case took place in New York, not the home of Vince's company, which is Stamford, Connecticut. The reason for this was the prosecution believed the distribution of steroids occurred in Long Island. However, McDevitt argued the case should really take place in Pennsylvania since all of the wrestlers bought their steroids from that state, which makes fucking sense. The case still went forward in New York. McMahon entered a plea of not guilty and was released on bond for $250,000, claiming the proceedings were unfair to him and his company. McMahon could face 11 years in prison and a $500,000 fine if he was found guilty. With the trial scheduled for June of 1994, it was time to get the trial underway. Actually, never mind, it just got delayed GTA 6 style. It's now going to take place next month. The rival wrestling company for the WWF at the time was World Championship Wrestling, also known as WCW, owned by one Ted Turner, who also owned TBS, TNT, Cartoon Network, etc. He suggested trying to get the trial covered on CNN through the Turner broadcasting system. 3 charges were thrown out before the trial started, leaving 2 counts of distributing steroids and 1 count of conspiracy to distribute steroids. After a whole month, we can now discuss what was said and occurred in the trial of Vince McMahon. The prosecution claimed Vince was in charge of distributing steroids amongst the wrestlers while also requiring them to be on steroids to work in the WWF. McMahon would state that he did use steroids before they were illegal to use in 1990 and declared the WWF was completely drug-free. I'm smelling bullshit on that statement because some of these guys are dripping juice. I mean, just look at peak Triple H. Look at Test in 2004. These people be juicy. 11 wrestlers were called to the stand for the trial, with the main witness being Hulk Hogan, the biggest star for the WWF during the 80s. What's interesting about this is Hulk Hogan was working for WCW at the time of the trial. He could have easily said, "Fuck the Vince McMahon, Hulk," and throw him under the bus. Hogan testified under immunity from prosecution, and McDevitt was able to convince the court to label Hogan as John Doe in the court records. McDevitt would argue that Hogan and Zahorian were patient and doctor respectively, so having them in the records would compromise patient confidentiality. Hogan would reveal a few things as a part of his testimony, but nothing compromising to Vince McMahon himself. Hogan said he has taken steroids previously under his own prescription for undisclosed medical purposes. Some of them he even got from Zahorian himself. Vince never told him to take steroids, and he never bought any for Hogan. He did, however, share steroids with McMahon while steroids were extremely common to use. He would call the executive secretary of Vince McMahon to place any of his steroid orders with Zahorian. Hogan said he took steroids for 14 years, but never specifically said when he stopped using them. A few other wrestlers who testified are Rick Rude, Tully Blanchard, the Warlord, the Ultimate Warrior, Superstar Billy Graham, Moondog Rex, and Thomas Zane. Out of the 11 wrestlers who testified, 10 of them testified Vince McMahon never supplied them with steroids. The one wrestler who did was Kevin Wackles, also known as Nails, with a Z or a Z if you're a filthy fucking stinking UK member. He claimed that Vince pressured him to take steroids to keep his job within the WWF. Nails did the one thing you probably shouldn't do as a witness during a trial against your former employer, contradicting yourself. Earlier in the trial, Nails would say he has no animosity toward Vince McMahon. However, later in the trial, Nails would go in and say he hated Vince McMahon, which immediately gave the defense an argument against the witness. The defense for Vince McMahon, would now argue that Nails was a hostile witness and was trying to get Vince put in federal prison. Nails and Vince McMahon did have a grudge against each other after filing lawsuits against each other in the year of 1992. Nails claimed that Vince McMahon sexually assaulted him, and that was what his lawsuit was for. You could probably guess what Vince's lawsuit was about. Good old character defamation, which is exactly what Billy Mitchell could sue me for if I didn't say allegedly earlier in the video. The defense argued, in an easier way to explain it, that Nails was fired from the WWF and was looking for revenge against Vince McMahon. We're going to fast forward to the future 2003 Ninja Turtle style because Nails did an interview in 2023 and explained why he went and testified in the trial. He told the DOJ, the Department of Justice, to get lost multiple times because he didn't want to deal with Vince or the WWF anymore. At some point, his house became surrounded by federal agents and the FBI gave him a subpoena forcing him to testify. Apparently, they would pay him for giving his testimony. We have one other witness to talk about in the trial against Vince McMahon, Dr. George Zahorian. Zahorian testified that Vince never told the wrestlers to go buy steroids from him. Agreeing with Zahorian, the defense would state that McMahon and Zahorian would have only one discussion about him selling steroids. The discussion was about McMahon's concern for the health and well-being of his wrestlers using said steroids. We are now at the verdict of the case, and based on what I told you, it's exactly what you expect. Judge Mishler dismissed the distribution charges against Vince McMahon because the prosecution failed to provide the evidence necessary to prove the distribution occurred in the state of New York. One charge remains for the jury to discuss, which they did for 16 hours, coming back with a not guilty verdict on July 23, 1994. The trial lasted 18 days overall. If you want to see actual court documents and transcripts, courtlistener.com has the documents available. I didn't go through them myself, I just read the articles about this event. So if you want to read them and show me that I'm wrong about something, go ahead. Just make sure you post the corrections in the comments. I need that YouTube engagement for that algorithm, brother. The WWF would bring in an independent drug testing policy instead of using their in-house policy. This policy would be that any WWF wrestler caught with drugs in their possession would be fired, which happened to WWF wrestler Crush. He was arrested for possession of marijuana and steroids in Hawaii, making the WWF terminate his contract. References to the drug testing policy would be made on TV in the Billionaire Ted skits, which made light of the fact that WCW didn't have a drug testing policy. Eventually, the policy would be removed due to cost in 1996. Steroids are good to use once again! Yippee! After 1994, the WWF would start putting smaller guys on the top of the card instead of the massive yoink to god guys dripping juice and asparagus. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen of the court, the steroid scandal for the WWF could have changed the landscape of wrestling forever. Who knows? Maybe The Rock, John Cena, and Dave Bautista wouldn't become some of the biggest Hollywood stars in the world. Maybe I wouldn't be here. If CM Punk didn't hook me in on my first wrestling show I've watched, this channel wouldn't exist, and I wouldn't have realized that entertaining people is what I want to do with my life. Wrestling may be homoerotic and fake, but damn! Is it some good entertainment? My sources were Wikipedia, the New York Times, Politico, Congress, DEA, and a few other websites. And most images came from Wikimedia Commons. That was topic 1 of the professional wrestling iceberg I found. This is a little known secret. There's a lot of fucking topics on this iceberg chart. If you guys want me to continue the series, you know what to do. Let me know by liking and commenting. Stay golden, people of the YouTube intro. No, you're the time judge. Anything but that, please. No! Oh, fuck.
Bonus stage.
The National Wrestling Alliance, also known as the NWA, was founded July 14, 1948 in Waterloo, Iowa. It began as a governing body of a group of promotions where the heads of promotions were the board of directors. It operated with the territory system and recognized only one world champion between all of the promotions under it. They were the sole governing body of professional wrestling in the US before the 1960s. It also was the largest and most influential body until the mid-1980s when original members went out of business because of the result of the WWF national expansion. Crush was also known as Brian Keith Adams. After getting released from the WWF, he went to WCW under the name Brian Bryan Adams. In 2002, he tried having a career in boxing, but retired due to back and shoulder injuries. He died at the age of 43 on August 13, 2007 due to combined drug intoxication. The Billionaire Ted skits were comedic sketches in 1996 that parodies WCW and the owner Ted Turner. They also had parodies of Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage as the Huckster and Nacho Man, respectively. These sketches would mock the age of the wrestlers underemploy of WCW. The skits would become more malicious instead of just being a silly parody by broadcasting with anti-Turner advertising. The skits were ended by the USA Network, the TV network airing the WWF's Monday Night Raw, specifically Kay Koplovitz of the USA Network.
I tried to